Boys and girls should be raised the same way. 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm just going to say that I strongly agree, simply because I guess that allows more options for like a creative imagination. And honestly, like in today's day and age, like no one really like assigns, I guess, sort of say like gender roles anymore. Like pink is no longer for girls and like blue is no longer for boys. Like I honestly feel like it should just be mixed and everyone should just be like pretty equal.
That's how I would raise my daughter.
There are differences that there is a different way that I'm going to raise a boy than I am a girl. It could be the way the boy conducts himself versus the way a female conducts herself in public or at home. I have a boy, so I want to raise him as a strong, hardworking man that will provide for his wife. Where my daughter, I would raise her to support the man, because I feel that there is a role for a man and there is a role for a woman. A woman and a man are not there to compete. They're there to complement each other.
There should be equal opportunity for all Americans. 3, 2, 1, go.
I don't know. I just feel like, for me, like the reason I strongly agree is because I'm sort of putting like Americans into the group of just people in general. I just feel like everybody should have an equal opportunity, like no matter who they are, no matter like what their background is. So I guess I strongly agree, but not just for Americans, but just really for everybody. But like, since this is talking also about Americans, which falls into that category, I feel like, yeah, they should have an equal opportunity.
I think it's hard to disagree with that as a philosophical statement, that everybody should have an equal opportunity. I don't think that everybody does have an equal opportunity, but I think they should, and it's easy to agree with that. I would just give the disclaimer that I do not think that an intervention on behalf of either the state or certain social services to attempt to generate an equal opportunity can occur without generating inequality in other ways. And therefore, while we can all philosophically agree, yes, everyone should have an equal opportunity, certain actions that have been taken over the years historically to attempt to level the playing field come with unfairness of their own, and it's a very complicated issue that can't just be solved with easy things or a certain program.
Okay. I support the death penalty. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, this was hard.
Yeah, and honestly, it depends on the situation. Like, I would have to say that right off the bat. Like, for example, rapists, pedophiles, murderers, like people who are known serial killers, people who are already basically on death row for crimes that are just honestly unimaginable to the average human being. I feel like it's a more reasonable situation in that matter, because if you can inflict such damage onto another person and not feel anything for that or have any emotion for that, I don't think that's like a viable reason for you to stay alive. I mean, if you're going to be on death row for the rest of your life, why take up space in the prison when the more reasonable option, in my opinion, is the death sentence?
I feel bad for the ones that died and they were innocent.
Honestly.
Will they
convicted, like post-mortem.
That's actually why I'm standing over here, because I'm fully in support of killing murderers, and I think lethal use of force in self-defense situations if your life is at risk is like, take them out of the gene pool, but the courts get it often wrong enough, or get it wrong often enough that I cannot stand by the death penalty as a thing for the most part, unless there's overwhelming evidence that the person did it.
And someone spoke about serial killers, There's also something to be said about what we can learn from criminal behavior after the fact.
Ted Bundy gave plenty of info that forever changed FBI now.
Exactly.
It's just like, I don't know. I get that, like I really, really do. But there's just something about having to work with someone who's committed something like that, even if it's like for like the greater good and
But
the very
think
end.
of it like this. We would have never made a profile, the FBI, of serial killers if it hadn't been for us studying and talking and having these weird relationships with serial killers we didn't put to death.
It's very like Hannibal Lecter-esque.
I don't disagree with that, but I'm just saying, there can be some benefits out of tragedy sometimes.
Yeah.
Not benefits, but
Learning experiences, very tragic learning experiences.
I believe if you didn't vote, you should not complain. 3, 2, 1, go.
And the whole saying that's like every vote matters, It's like, I guess it's true to a fault, because we have the electoral college and all that jazz. But I feel like if you didn't at least attempt to share like your opinion, you didn't attempt to like make your thoughts known, like whether or not you supported either candidate, I feel like who are you to say anything about like our current state, like whether you agree or whether you disagree. Like you should have at least tried, like I know people who usually like didn't vote and then they actually voted this one because they actually cared, and I feel like that gave them the actual right to be like, yeah, like this is how I feel about that stance. And I'm not saying you shouldn't like share that, but I'm just saying that you should have actually done something to support your stance, which is to vote.
And if you want to have a voice in what happens and who gets elected, then you need to vote. And if you just decide to stay home, that's different than, I didn't make it there on time, but if you decide to stay home, you are in essence saying, I will have no voice in this vote. You're making that choice. That's what I say.
Yeah, but what you're forgetting is you have people who are disenfranchised who voted, people who aren't allowed to vote because of stupid laws that are made, or they don't have the right ID on them. That would say like young people don't have any say in our democracy because they don't get to vote. So there are caveats to people that aren't allowed to vote, prisoners, just because they, once they have done their time, why aren't they allowed to vote? So we're all Americans. There are sometimes some reasons that you just can't vote or you're stopped voting. That doesn't mean your voice shouldn't be heard.
Yeah, I just generally think that anybody has a right to complain just as they have a right to vote, unless they're a felon or anything like that. And your fellow countrymen may not care what you have to say, or they may chastise you and say, you should have voted if you cared. There are certain issues within politics that are not contingent on voting, things that happen due to how large our government is within certain agencies and things like that. For example, like the NSA spying scandal with PRISM, that was a multi-generational thing that was building up over numerous administrations, and whether or not a person had voted, them complaining about that would not, it wouldn't matter who you voted for, that was still an issue to everybody. So you can complain if you didn't vote, it's just people might not listen.
Yeah, and I don't even think anyone said, what about immigrants? People who are over here, working with visas legally, and are paying taxes, they may not be able to vote, but that doesn't mean they can't complain about the system they are within.
Yeah. I feel like sort of to clarify, I meant mostly for people who like have the right to vote. They can vote, like they literally can vote. Like there's nothing keeping them from it. If you didn't choose to vote, you know, I feel like, and then you're like trying to complain about like our current state of government, like I feel like that's when I really don't want to hear your opinion. You know, like I really do understand like what you're saying about all these different like sort of situations where people are unable to, and I really get that. You know, like yeah, sure, express your opinion. You just were unfortunate in that aspect. But if you know, are completely just like you can vote, you literally could just step outside your house and go vote, and you didn't.
But again, it's not that easy. What about single moms who have jobs and can't step outside and vote on the day that, you know, they should be voting, you know, because they need to support their families and stuff like that? There are gray areas in voting, I would say.
I think people of the opposite party are misinformed or do not know better. 3, 2, 1, go.
I think we're all uninformed. I think it's hard to find a place where you can get facts without spin on it.
That is very true.
Yes.
And I think when you live in a day and age where you can't go to a source where you completely can trust that this is not opinionated, you know, that it's hard to be totally informed.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like that causes a lot of arguments, especially when it comes into regards of, I guess, sort of say masculinity and femininity. Like when it comes down to it, like there can be very opinionated arguments on what defines masculinity, and there can also be very opinionated arguments of what defines femininity and the little tics and the mannerisms and all that stuff. So if it comes down into regards to gender and the stereotypes and stuff like that, I feel like it can be very uninformed because it's always changing with every generation, and everyone always has a different view and a different opinion.
We learn what we want to learn based on our opinions,
Yeah.
what sides we are on. Mm-hmm. And again, that keeps you from truly being informed. When you're just seeking facts or information that just supports your argument, you're no longer trying to seek what is actually truth.
We all have our own opinions, and based off of our ideology and sometimes it's how we're raised. It could even be religion. It could be our nationality that puts us in a tunnel vision of everything else is wrong and I'm right, and this is for both sides. I think that a lot of people are misinformed because they're not allowing themselves to view the other side and do the research of what the other side is saying, and giving it a fair opinion, and then from there going, okay, I heard their side and I heard their side, but I still agree with mine. Okay, you're informed, you informed yourself, you actually allowed yourself to be open to both parties.
I just feel like that misinformation, it just really just drives a wedge between something that should be sort of a team effort, instead of trying to only support one side and then only support the other side, instead of trying to come together and sort of create a compromise. But I feel like a lot of people are reluctant to do that because of that misinformation, where they sort of see each other as enemies instead of teammates.
I'm just the loner over here. I don't think that people in the other party, so to speak, and I should note I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, registered for neither, and so I often find myself exactly what you just said. I'm agreeing with some aspects of one party and some aspects of the other party, and often thinking, you know, both frustrate me heavily. So I don't think it's a question of people being misinformed in either party. I think that, like she said, people's political beliefs are an amalgamation of everything that they've ever been through, and including their experiences, their religions. It's just like a religion to a person. It's rare that people change political beliefs dramatically once they're an adult, because that is something that crystallizes over your life. So if it were just a question of misinformation, you would have, you know, at the top of intelligence and political research and things like that, you would have people trending more towards one party, because you would have, these are the people that are the most educated on everything, and they would all lean either Democrat or they would all lean either Republican. But that's not the case. You have extremely talented political scientists that know all the information who have a difference of opinion with their colleagues. So it can't just be a question of misinformation. It's just that people are different, and they have different opinions on how things should be handled, like any other field. And it's just an issue with our two-party system that people have to kind of pick one or the other, because, like you said earlier, you cast a third-party vote, and it's sort of a waste. I mean, it might be that as that number grows, if more and more people throw their vote away and say, I don't want to vote for either of these parties, I'd rather vote for this party, that, you know, that number might grow from year to year, but in our lifetimes, it's far-fetched. So,
would you agree a lot of people get information these days from...
Is there a lot of misinformation out there?
Right.
Tons, yeah, absolutely, for sure. But is that a reason to say that the other party of whatever you believe is misinformed? No, because it's happening to your party too.
I believe in immigration, but I am against illegal immigration. 3, 2, 1, go.
I think there's a lot of gray area in illegal immigration, because there sometimes can be really bad people who are trying to come into the country, but there's also sometimes people who need this country. Like I know people who have escaped into this country and then eventually got like citizenship because it was just complete turmoil, or in this instance that person was actually like sort of in threat of their life. So I feel like that's kind of like why I'm like exactly in the middle, because I do agree with immigration, like of course wholeheartedly, like go ahead, like immigrate wherever you want, you know, you do you. But legal immigration, I feel like there's a lot of gray area and whether or not like, because you can't really decide who's good and who's bad. So it's like, I don't want to say that I strongly agree or disagree, because there can either be two sides. So it's like, I'd just rather be like in the middle.
I don't think a lot of Americans understand how much illegal immigration keeps certain things like low price. I mean, like farming, strawberries, for example. You know, if we didn't have illegals doing, and it's horrible, but doing that job, picking fruit and stuff like that, we would be spending $10 on a barrel of strawberries in the grocery store.
A lot of people don't realize is that there are systems in place for legal immigration for all who want to come to America. There are systems in place already. There's a vetting process to make sure that they have good intentions, which makes us a safer nation, to make sure we're not letting in the wrong people that want to do us harm. When it comes to farming, yes, it is cheaper labor, but it's at their expense. It's exploitation of all those people that are breaking their backs to come here illegally instead of the right way. Also, you have a ton of very bad people crossing these borders that are bringing a lot of drugs. They're murdering, they're child molesters, they're gang members. Illegal immigration normally is about making sure that those kind of people aren't coming into our country.
But that would imply that the illegal immigration I feel you're talking about is those who cross a border illegally. But most of our illegal immigrants come over with green cards and just don't leave.
Right.
You know, so those people normally aren't the criminal types. They just don't renew their green cards and don't.
But
leave.
now they're not following the law of the
I don't disagree with that.
You know, so it's like.
We all don't follow laws of the land. Doesn't make us bad people.
However, it is a different country. I mean, it's much different than speeding.
Just what I wanted to add is that there's instances where people might want to use those resources, but those resources are not useful enough.
I actually agree with just about everything she said and just about everything that she said simultaneously. I think that we have policy for a reason, that the borders should be, permeable but not wide open. People should be able to get in if they are qualified to do so and if they have good intentions. but there's tons of bureaucracy, there's tons of red tape, the policies are convoluted. I don't think your average American high school senior could pass the citizenship test, even ones that were raised here. It's tough, but it is doable. But like she said, it's a very long process. There's not that many immigration judges. Our ports of entry are clogged. There's a need for more manpower, and I think we could point some of our tax revenue that goes into certain things at our ports of entry and streamline those processes while spending less time on other things, especially, like, for example, the border wall. If we took all the funding that was going to be designated towards that and instead expedited the ports of entry and got better at sending away people that don't have any business being there and getting people through that do have business being there, everything could be solved. We would have, less illegal immigration overall.
This nation is too divided. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yes, it's divided. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that in such political times, a lot of people have become a little too close-minded about the other side. I think that we actually could share a lot of, as we've seen today, a lot of the same ideas. There's just slight little differences in each one of our opinions. But I think, honestly, I blame politics for dividing us so severely, because if I were to see you in need or you in need, I'm not going to ask you, are you a Democrat or a Republican?
And be like,
I'm going to help you.
like 300 where you just put some
I would disagree with you there. I don't think it's so much politics, because this type of politics have been around since it was invented. I think it's social media.
Oh, definitely.
And
I do agree with you.
That has brought out things in people that has never been explored before, because now you have a platform where you can say anything to anybody and there's no any cause or an effect. I think the reason I'm here is that I think we're not as divided as we think we are, and I think once we do sit down and we do start having conversations when we're actually going to listen to one another, that our division isn't here, it comes a little closer, and we can find common ground. I think that is something America has lost a little bit, like you said, like in disasters, we can pull together and it doesn't matter, like I'll pull you out of a river if it's overflowing, but I think America has forgotten some people in this great land of ours are living in a disaster every day, and sometimes we forget to bend down and help a fellow person out that isn't experiences these like vast things that are going on, and having a little sympathy for,
I feel like we all just need to do like what you said, like we all just need to take a deep breath, but it's so difficult with all of that sort of happening, all the media, all the politics, everybody who's up there, just having a screaming match instead of being like, okay, I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, let's talk, let's see how we can do a compromise for the country. But I feel like they're just too stubborn to actually they're too prideful to be like, yes, I will listen to your side.
And I mean, a lot of my family members, they are on a more far right side, and unfortunately they don't agree with everything I have to say, and so for that purpose they don't speak to me. And when it comes down to it, like, you're still gonna love your family, you're still gonna love the people that you hold close, even though that they hold different views than you. But people are almost using politics as an excuse to act the way that they do. So I've noticed, just from personal experience, people, bashing me and calling me, hateful names, and then using Trump as an excuse. When it comes down to it, we don't personally know him. We don't know his views behind closed doors. So at the end of the day, who are you to judge and use someone of a higher platform as an excuse to distance yourself from someone socially.
The situation you're describing where people are using politics as an excuse to, cut you out because they disagree with your beliefs, that's not a question of politics being an issue so much as it is a question of them being terrible people.
Yeah.
And using that excuse. I do agree, there's some political divide, but like Dave said, George Washington's farewell address, he said we need to watch partisan fighting. The Federalists and the Democratic Republicans were at each other's throats about to tear the country apart. We had a civil war in 1865, literally the country split in half. We are nowhere near as divided as this country has been in the past. The only times we've ever been fully unified are like World War I and II, when we had Nazis to fight. Every other time in history, people have been talking about how we are more divided now than ever. And like we split into two countries and fought over it. So we'll get through this. It seems bad because we're living in it right now, and of course we should keep striving towards things. Nobody should just cross their arms and say, it's always been like this. So no sense in finding common ground. But it's nothing to panic over. Like we have term limits. It's gonna pass. It's fine.
And I'm not a big fan of the president himself, but I am a fan of America. And I am a fan of us doing well and right.
I think, divided as we are politically as a country, which again is not that divided, but even at our most divided, it's a symptom of everybody wanting what they think is best for America, but having different ideas about what that is. So if we find common ground on something, it's wanting the country to succeed. It's just we want it to succeed on our terms and not others' terms.
For me, I have been called racist because I support Trump. And they'll call me a white, whatever, Hispanic, and I've had people follow me on Facebook, and then as soon as they found out I supported Trump, it was, don't call her, she's a racist, she's a this and that, and I'm just like, wow, because of my political.
Okay, we're good. That's a wrap. Good job, guys.
The conversation between the participants led me to the conclusion that common ground can be found between people of opposite parties. Though they do have undeniable differences, they had a respectful conversation that they learned valuable information from, as well as myself. Now, looking at the societal application of this documentary, citizens can take this information to change their perceptions of opposite parties they may despise. Not every political conversation has to be an argument, rather it can be a learning experience for both parties, which ideally becomes the norm.